what key advice would you give to that future entrepreneur or even to yourself to go build the next great startup in business?
Like there's all these like little things that matter so much when you're working with someone. And if you find someone who you really gel with, then don't be stingy with equity. Get them involved and do whatever it takes to keep them on board, because it's really hard to find those people. And if you find that person, then you should do whatever it takes to keep them on board.
Like entrepreneurship, a lot of times can be really, really lonely. Like sometimes it feels like you're the only one who maybe is pushing the boat, right? Like if you don't have another person who you know is like right there with you, and it can feel like that. Even when you do, like it feels like, oh, like I have all these problems on my shoulder and that.
So let's pretend I'm one of those 10x employees or even an average employee at a company.
Mm-hmm.
Should I be pretty scared of this future? Like, I don't know, this sounds kind of scary. You're basically saying my job is no longer necessary. Should I be scared of that or embrace it? And if embrace, how should I embrace it? Thank you so much for joining our next episode of Entrepreneurial Excellence. I have two amazing guests today, Tarun and Abhishek. In both of them are experts in sort of startups in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I thought it'd be great to have them on and do this sort of three-way conversation, which is the first one we've actually ever done for our interview series, because they're both experts and have come about this obviously very hot, sexy space in slightly different directions in different ways. And so having this conversation with them is one that I think will hopefully be really interesting to our audience about how to use AI for your startup, how to make it a real difference, how enterprises and big companies should be using or thinking about AI, how much is hype, how to run your business and be smart about it, be real profitable and run a profitable business like Tarun's doing, or be high growth, fast moving like Abhishek's doing in more traditional startup perspective and world. So maybe to kick it off though, why don't we, Abhishek, start with you and dive in briefly to just kind of give us your background, right? How did you get into AI in the first place? Why was it a thing? You've done some other startups in the past and had a bunch of amazing internships, obviously, before that. And now you're building BetterBrain, but you weren't in AI before. And yet, at least all of our conversations, I know you're a deep thinking expert on the topic.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so I'll start with the quick background. I got pretty obsessed with automation when I was in high school. I used to text my dad all the time to take insulin every night because he has diabetes. And I eventually realized that I could just write code to do the whole thing for me. So I did that, and that's sort of where I started. I taught myself how to code to do that, and then I got excited about algo trading and got really deep into web scraping, NLP databases, and things like that. Ended up studying computer science, comp finance, and robotics in school at Carnegie Mellon. Did some AI research there. That was less well thought out. It was more just because it seemed fun. And then after that, I dropped out to start my first company, which was called Vector Dash, and that was a cloud gaming startup. We went through YC in 2019 and grew it to tens of thousands of users. At that point, I went and did things I was excited about. So started a crypto algo trading fund for a bit.
What happened? What happened to Vector Dash? So where did that go?
Yeah, so we ended up shutting it down because number one, I'm not a gamer, and I think one of the lessons learned there was that founder market fit is really, really important, and I don't enjoy playing PC games. We went viral in Latin America, so we had a lot of users. It's just unit economics didn't work, and so we would have had to go the high growth startup route. So the next step would have been to go raise a seed round, which I didn't really want to do. Couldn't see myself working on it for the next 5 years.
And did you not want to sell it? Were there not opportunities to sell it then? If you were going viral, I would imagine there are people who could have bought it. Maybe just not worth the effort.
Yeah, there were, but it just wasn't worth the effort. I'd much rather just spend my time doing things I'm excited about. I think money is
Life's too short.
Side effect.
Yeah. No, I love it. Totally agree. By the way, like money is a side effect of you doing things you enjoy. And
Exactly.
anyone who has the opposite direction, like, well, I'm going to work to enjoy things. Like, no. You're never going to make real money then. And you're probably never going to enjoy yourself day to day. So right there with you. Okay. So great. You're like not interested. It's great success, but not what I want to do. What was the next big thing from there?
Yeah, next big thing was I started doing crypto algo trading. So one of the reasons I got into coding in the first place was because of algo trading. So I got really excited about applying that in crypto.
By algo, you mean the actual token algo? like Algorand, or was it like algorithm
Like
trading,
algorithmic
algorithmic?
trading. Like we built our own infrastructure and strategies and things like that.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so we had a couple strategies that did really well. They performed like 50% above market in 2020, and 2020 was a good year for crypto. So that was going well, but again, then like next step would have been to go raise $5 million, start an actual fund, and I sort of did a lot of soul searching at that point and thought about whether I wanted to do startups, whether I wanted to do hedge fund, and both of those are like very different. They look very different day to day, and I ended up deciding that startups is really where my heart was, and I wanted to keep doing that. So I ended up deciding to keep starting companies. Tried a couple ideas out, built some AI products, and then landed on BetterBrain.
And okay, so then give a quick description about BetterBrain. What does it do? What's it supposed to do? What's your goal with it? And why BetterBrain versus the billions or hundreds of thousands of other ideas, at least, that are out there that you maybe could have done and maybe even had in your brain?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So there were a couple things that I learned along my journey. One of the big ones is founder market fit. And the reason I got into tech in the first place was because I enjoyed automating things. And I think, especially over the past couple of years, AI has gotten good enough to where you can start to automate a lot of things that weren't possible to automate in the past. And so I got very excited about that. So I've been building AI products for a couple of years now, been building on top of OpenAI's APIs. And BetterBrain specifically, I was excited about because I have a good amount of experience in data. So I've worked at a hedge fund, I started a hedge fund, and you know, all of that is just pure data cleaning, data manipulation, data analysis. And so I've been doing data stuff my whole life without actually knowing that I was doing data stuff. And combining that plus AI seemed fun. And I went and talked to some of my friends who are in data, and they were like, yeah, we hate pulling data. Like, it's so annoying to go write SQL queries whenever somebody needs a piece of data. I'm like, cool, maybe we can solve that. Maybe we can automate a lot of that. So the quick TLDR on BetterBrain, um, everybody who's ever worked at a company knows how annoying siloed information is, where only specific people know how to do certain things. It's not documented anywhere. It's hard to find those people, and you spend so much of your time just trying to figure out who you need to talk to figure out how to do the thing you need to do. And so there's all this tribal knowledge that lives in people's heads that results in a bunch of redundant work being done. So we've found a way to codify a lot of this tribal knowledge and leverage it to help people do things much faster. Now, doing this across all departments and all workflows is a massive undertaking. And like I said, I was just personally very excited about data. So that's sort of where we're starting, data teams. And they especially feel this pain because they literally spend half of their time doing ad hoc data requests, which, if you ask any data person, their least favorite part of their job, I guarantee you it's going to be ad hoc data requests. And they spend half their time doing it. That's crazy. Um, and
But they are sort of small buyers, though, right? I mean, part of the, and I worked in the data space as well, do sort of data cleaning, ETL, stuff like that. And yes, it's a huge pain point, but they're a sort of small buyer group to some extent and don't always have a lot of discretionary cash from their executives. So it's maybe not the ideal buyer. Sometimes can be a challenge, right? I mean, yes, total pain point. Unfortunately, one that the people who control the purse strings are not always, they don't care about as much.
yeah, totally. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's super important to be workflow centric. Like in a market, like with a customer like data, it's really important to be able to clearly articulate where you drive ROI. And to do that, you need to be super workflow centric. And with ad hoc data requests, the cool thing about data is that every single team within an org touches data in some way. If you're running a data driven organization, which I think most companies are trying to, every team within a company touches data. And so we don't really talk about the time savings for data teams, although that is a huge deal for them. And people do pay for data. There's a lot of like BI tools that are multi-billion-dollar companies. So there is a pretty big market for them. But the thing that I'm most excited about is, how do you let business stakeholders and data teams work together to make better data-driven decisions? And that's an entire workflow that currently exists and is very fragmented today. And so what we're working on is, basically, by codifying a lot of this tribal knowledge, we're able to help data teams do things much faster, and help business users tap into that tribal knowledge that lives in the data team's head, and then help them make decisions.
Amazing. And I've seen the product a little bit. I know it's pretty badass and still early days, but has a ton of power to it. And it's probably a good segue into the fact that in hearing about Tarun's background, because Tarun, you basically found that a ton of companies do have the problem that Abhishek's explaining, but they don't have either the internal even knowledge or team to go help build that out. And so they want to hire an outside expert to essentially build these pieces out. And before I let you go on stuff, I want to make sure I put a pause on one thing that I want to come back to, which is talking about something you mentioned, Abhishek, which is like automating for the sake of automation is sometimes I do think something that people make mistakes on. They say, oh, I want to automate this because it seems fun, but it actually doesn't provide as much value as they want. We can come back to that. But in some ways, Tarun, maybe you also kind of, the work you do is you help people figure out what really should be automated versus what sounds sexy. But yeah, so tell us, Tarun, about your background, why you're in this space, and how you ended up where you are, which is whereas Abhishek's building a venture-backed high-scale company, you decided to do the opposite in some ways and say, we're going to build a services business in this space, much more profitable. You won't have that sexy headline of raising hundreds of millions of dollars at billion-dollar valuations, but you control your own destiny a little bit more at the same time. So walk us through how you even just got to that decision point.
Yeah, 100%. No, it's actually really interesting listening to your story, Abhishek, because there's like so many similarities with my own life and the path that I took to get here. It seems just at like one point we just like split up. We saw the same problem and split in two different ways. So I think that's fascinating. Kind of like running back the tape on me. Yeah, I basically like I've been involved with computers for a really long time. I actually did start like by playing video games. That's kind of how I entered the computer science domain. And then like in high school, I was a pretty shit student, for lack of a better term. Also, can we swear? Is that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, totally
Cool.
swear. I don't know.
This is how I talk.
Will say about us swearing, but I think it's fine.
Okay, cool. Feel free to bleep me or whatever. But yeah, this is how I talk. Yeah. So I like was a pretty shit student, truth be told. But the like one class that I did really, really well in was computer programming. And it made sense. I was like building a game in the class, and I just like fell in love with that process of, breaking down this huge abstraction into like smaller subcomponents that you can actually like build on top of, and build together. That I think struck a chord with me. And so I actually started, when I went into college, what I thought I wanted to be was like a game developer. On the coding side, I realized my artistic talents were far lacking. So didn't go down that route, but started in college to do that. And then eventually was just like, actually, I don't think that there's that much money in video game development, and it seems like a really hard life. So I'm going to just become a programmer. And I enjoyed programming, really.
And to be clear, before you go too much further on this, like you might have been a shit student, but you were decent enough that you also got into UT Austin, which is obviously one of the best, if not the best college, certainly in Texas. So your grades were good enough. Don't undersell yourself. Your grades were good enough to at least get in and get into the computer science program. Yeah, which is also a really good CS program.
I was fortunate enough to get in there, and I think that was like a really big catalyst for me. And I had a complicated high school story, which is a story for another time. But yeah, essentially made my way into UT. And even when I got there, I wasn't sure what area of programming I wanted to get into. I was just like, okay, computer science, like and my whole thing was like, let me just try out a bunch of different stuff. So like I interned anywhere from like enterprise level companies, mid-level, and startups as well. And that's really where I fell in love with the whole thing. And then my junior year, this was right around the time that I started to get interested in AI, but a friend of mine actually was like, hey, I'm like working on this project. Do you want to basically make no money for the whole summer, live in a house with like 6 people in like a 3-bedroom, and work like 80 hours a week with me? And I was like, yeah, that seems dope. And so I just like,
I mean, in true startup fashion, like that's what good founders say is like, yeah, like that's exactly what I want to be doing, which I know a lot of people probably in the world think that's insane. But like for founders and people with that mentality, that's like awesome. You want to work, jam really hard with people you enjoy on fixing a really tough problem. That's I don't know. I think that's really fun too. So that's awesome.
Yeah. No, I mean, I I've always been somebody who's been extremely motivated and like passionate about the things that I like, and like only when I'm doing something that I like can I actually like put everything into it. And I think that's that really clicked for me. Every other internship or all the classes that I took, I found like really tedious, really boring. But when I was there in that environment, like surrounded by people who were sharing the same mentality as me, just like putting everything on the line, just grinding for no obvious return, right? And just like playing for some long-term game that's, 10 years out. I don't know why, but I loved it. And from there, I actually I joined that team, and that company ended up going through a couple pivots into what became Gather, which was my last company. So I was working on it like senior year of college, and actually my first year into my master's as well. I continued on at UT and to get my master's in AI before I dropped out after my first year to go full time on Gather, much like Abhishek did, to focus on that full time. And Gather was really an intersection of what I found really interesting and AI and machine learning, right? And so like that's actually what drew me to it. Was I had just started to build up this understanding of what AI was, the techniques involved, what its capabilities were, and I've always had this fascination with personalization. I always like understanding like everything from like Amazon recommendations to the search results that I see in my Google, versus somebody else. Like I always felt that technology existed to craft the world in the way that I want it to be, or like it's a tool to allow me to see the world in the way that I want it to be. And Gather to me, which a quick little high level summary was, it was a planning tool designed to like help people coordinate with their friends or larger organizations they were a part of. And the thesis was really simple. It was just, we thought that we knew that there was a huge loneliness problem, right? And this was pre-COVID also.
Yes, it's even worse post-COVID.
Right now it's acute now, but before, like even then we were like, we know about this problem. It's not that people don't want to hang out. It's that it's a huge pain in the ass to hang out. And like, there's just so much friction involved. That's why usually only one person in a friend group like ends up being the planner and then goes and does all this stuff. So instead we're like, well, why don't we just like build recommender systems, right? Around time, location, people, preferences, anything, and help everybody make plans as simple as somebody who actually likes doing it. And so that was like the whole thesis behind the company. And we just built a ton of really, really cool AI models and technology. Worked on it for about 2 years full time, but like a year before that part time as well. Managed to convince some of my best friends from school to abandon their nice 6-figure tech jobs to come and join me on this wild journey, raise some money, and then eventually at the start of this year, we got acquired, and that's when I started PressW, which is what I do now.
Congratulations, by the way, on the acquisition. I mean, even if it wasn't massive, and I don't know if big or small, but like just getting to an acquisition and getting something out of it for all the work you put in is a nice thing.
Yeah. No, we were pretty stoked. It was a good deal for us, and that's kind of what led us down. Where we were like, well, what now? Right? Like we just like we dropped out of our masters. Like we, like this is like what we put all of our eggs into. Like what's the next step? And I think we all, me and the two other guys in particular, just looked at each other and were like, well, we work really well together and we have such a good time having ownership of the projects that we're a part of, and like knowing that every hour that we put in ends up going straight back to us in some way. It was really, really big. We all were like, okay, I guess we're not getting another job, so we're going to do something together. Do we want to build a product or do we want to go down services? And to sort of answer your question, and maybe this is like where Abhishek and I diverged, is like we saw this AI landscape, right? We had been in it for like 6-7 years now, right? Like we had spent our time in school learning that, and like we had taken jobs in AI before, so all of us had a fundamental understanding of it. But given how molten the state of AI is today, given the new LLM technology, the breakthroughs that are happening there, and the applications, we weren't so confident that we were going to nail an idea down that we would want to go and invest the next 10 years into. And so we instead elected, why don't we take a step back? Like the real problem here is like all these companies have all this data, but they have like no idea what to do with it. They don't know like what is actually going to generate leverage by implementing it. So let's go give them the shovels and picks to do so, right? Let's go sell them that and help these people actually generate, returns within their own business, improvement on their margins by adopting some of this new technology and leveraging their data that they have available to them.
And so is PressW then, so you guys are essentially a consulting firm to enable larger enterprise, I guess mostly maybe some smaller companies as well, to figure out how to leverage and how to leverage, but also where to leverage their data, maybe potentially using AI.
Exactly. I mean, what we call ourselves is an AI and automation agency, which is a fancy way of saying that we're in the business of optimizing other businesses. So essentially, we've developed like a system that we call AIM, but it's essentially stands for audit, implement, and maintain. We come in and like meet with all of the key stakeholders, and it seems like Abhishek, you're going from the data team up. We kind of go the other way. We start high level with all of the key stakeholders in terms of like anywhere from the CEO, maybe perhaps all the way down to the data teams themselves. Figure out where within their systems like are they just like losing time and energy and efficiency, and then give them, you know, suggestions of like, well, here's the assets that you actually have in terms of data. Here's how they can be leveraged. Here's how what the future is going to look like, and here's what we like recommend.
And so there's a lot probably to come back to on that front, but even before we get there, I have one question that I've been pondering since I've been thinking about this conversation is, PressW, is it because you want to close things down? Like Command W is like close on most applications. Like, why the name PressW?
Good question. Okay, so this actually goes back to gaming, actually. So the all three of us who started this, we all played games, and we played games. That was like kind of aside from work, that was like one of the things that we did together. We don't do it as much anymore, but W is always the forward key. So you're pressing W, you're moving your company forward.
Got it. It's also close, of course, for a lot of applications. So that's its own challenge.
Yeah, that's true.
So both kind of different stories going different directions in many cases. When you guys think through AI itself, right? AI is basically only in the past 12 months, right? AI became like super hot, big. ChatGPT came out, OpenAI did all the stuff they're doing. It kind of exploded the landscape. For me personally, as someone who's been in this space, I've actually been, you talk about personalization, Tarun. I built a company in personalization. My first company ever was actually using data exhaust from like big social networks when it was still open. You could get all that stuff to verify people. It was like, hey, how do we use big data in some machine learning to verify that you went to UT Austin? Things like that, verify your jobs, your background, stuff like that. This was like pre-days when Lyft and Uber and Airbnb were just getting started. And it's like, how do I feel comfortable being with someone who I don't know? And then my next company was moving on. We actually did real-time personalization. The whole thesis was, how do we use machine learning? My co-founder was actually one of the guys who built YouTube's algorithms, which many people don't even think about this today. But when you go to YouTube, I'd say the average person in America and probably the world does not realize or really give it any thought that when you go to YouTube, that page that you see on your YouTube homepage is completely different for you in real time at that moment. And the goal of YouTube is to get you to watch more video on their site, right? The more video you watch, the more time you spend on their site, the more advertising dollars they make. And it means, of course, the less time you have to spend on competitors' websites, because time is finite. So if they can capture more of your time, they'll make more money and hurt their competitors at the same time. But presumably you're there because you're enjoying it. You're also spending more time because you're enjoying the videos you're seeing. So it's a win-win-win if it's done well. And those were one of the first really big applications of machine learning to really engage the users and make them really successful. The crazy thing to me, as someone who's seen this now occur, and once again, I was in the company that did ETL, extract, transform, load, doing data cleansing work was there's all these new iterations, and now AI is a sort of big, sexy, exciting thing, but it's not, it's just, to me, another iteration of things. But what I want to hear from you guys is, has AI, right, truly artificial intelligence, or is it really just machine learning in another name? But like, is it actually game changing now, or does it just seem game changing because the interface, natural language interface essentially has made it accessible to the wider population now? Like, what are your guys' takes on that?
Okay, cool. I'll take a swing at it, and then maybe you'll agree, maybe you'll disagree. So I mean, I think to some degree, you're right, right? Like this is not something that just like popped up out of nowhere. This is like decades and decades and decades of research that has like culminated in this point that is now like public knowledge, right? Like everybody pretty much everybody with connection to the internet knows about ChatGPT nowadays. Um, and I do think that there's a good reason for that, right? Like there's a couple of important notes and what we're seeing with this latest trend that were not possible before. Number one is the democratization of AI. I think is actually a huge component, right? Like before, it would literally take somebody, like they wouldn't even hire you to be an AI or an ML engineer unless you had like a master's or preferably a PhD. Literally, like you had to go to school, do all the research to even get a job or be considered for one. Now it's like if you know how to work with REST, you can like hit an API and get back, a 1.7 trillion parameter model, spitting back information at you. Right. And so like it is truly nuts. And it did take a lot to build that, right? They OpenAI spent $1 billion making, GPT-3, and they must have spent more so far, but it took a lot of effort to create it. But now like you're seeing a new paradigm in which these really high tech sophisticated models are being offered through something as simple as an API. And because they're constrained to natural language in the way that they are, it's actually relatively simple to interface with them and then produce outputs from that. Right. So I think that was like one huge like turning point, and it made it easier. It made the barrier to entry way lower, which means that there's far more progress that we're going to continue to see. It's somewhat like exponential now, right? There's so many more eyes on the space, and because of that new development on the space. And I think also the actual core technology itself is different. So when I started in AI and machine learning, this sort of concept of generalization, it was pretty much universally acknowledged that like models are not good at they're not generalizers. They're not good at that. Right. And so like they're really good at like, specific fine-tuned tasks in which you're gonna like take a bunch of data and create one model that does a really good job of doing one thing. So I'll give you an example. In Gather, my last company, our interface for creating a plan, actually this was pre-GPT, so we're pretty proud of this, but it was literally to just type in a sentence, right? And you would just say like dinner tomorrow night at 9 p.m. with Adam and Abhishek at Taco Bell, and it would find the Taco Bell, find you both from my contacts, create the plan, right? But that model was extremely specific. Like the task of that model was super specific to the task at hand, which was to create an event out of the string, right? And these LLMs that are available now today are actually good at generalizing, which was like shocking. Like it was like they can now do everything from writing code to answering questions from the internet. They can, generate copy for an email. They can do a bunch of things because of, transformers, and then OpenAI really taking it to the new level with like the amount of data that they intook and trained their models off of. But I don't think that calling this latest wave just like, and ignoring the advancements that were actually made to the models at hand and how much context they can handle and the tasks they can do, that was, in my opinion, a pretty fundamental shift in its application. And now it's like, well, I can just like start feeding it in crazy amounts of data, right? And that's like what Abhishek's product is trying to do. And I'm sure he has his own, a lot of thoughts on that domain. But yeah, I mean, like just you can now take in everything from Slack messages, email threads, and actually feed it into a model that's able to rationalize over that entire context rather than just doing one specific task and then leverage it across different activities.
There are these areas, right, where people can help us, or like where AI can help us, but like, once again, how does a company, so I want to identify, like one of the things you mentioned when we first got started, right, is the idea that you like to automate a lot of things. It's like part of why you got into the space environments, because you like to automate. I've unfortunately worked with too many founders, myself included, where I'm like, let's automate everything. And you end up spending a lot of time trying to automate all the small little things. You're like, well, a machine can do this better and faster than I can.
Yep.
And you don't actually think through the real ROI of that decision. How do you think companies should think through that process? And like Tarun, same sort of question to you. Like, how do you give advice to people? You're certainly incentivized to make money yourself as a company. So the customer's always right. If they want to automate this thing, maybe you just say yes. How do you walk through that playbook for both of them?
Yeah. So I've advised a few different companies, nonprofits, around how to think about incorporating AI into their workflows. The number one, everybody wants to do everything, right? Like most like founders, CEOs that I talk to, they want to do everything. And my general advice is this framework of identify what are the top most painful workflows that people are spending the most time on, and then we can look at the impact that it would be to like actually automate or apply AI in these workflows, and then what does the effort look like to actually build a system that automates a lot of that. And I think if you can identify those most painful workflows and then do this impact effort analysis, you can actually choose which workflows make the most sense to apply AI to. That's typically how I think about it.
Do you have some examples for a company or for certain size companies of how they should, like, what are some really good examples of that? Because once again, like, yeah, the right framework, but people are lazy. They just want you to tell them what to do. So like, which is what they call Tarun for. But what are examples that you've seen, Abhishek, where like this actually has a real impact? And is it kind of company dependent, or we see almost generally for any modern business, these are the items that they should be thinking about?
Yeah, totally. I think one very basic example is let's compare to, let's say you have two workflows that you're looking at. One is customer success. So maybe it's like a customer support bot. You currently have a bunch of people who are responding to these customer support messages, and you want to automate away some of that. And let's say the second workflow you're thinking about is data analytics. So you want to write SQL queries, and you have a bunch of people writing SQL queries already, but you're like, oh, maybe I can automate this. So with those two things in mind, like, would you rather build a system which one would you rather build, right? The customer support thing, the way I would look at it is the impact, if you can actually automate it, is now you don't need all these people who are sitting there responding to all these messages, right? That's huge because companies spend millions and millions of dollars on this.
And also the challenge on that front too is with CS, you're trying to tie together the people you have in customer success to the demand side that you have too. And that demand is always fluctuating, right? I mean, a good example is with airlines. They don't know where there's going to be a major storm that hits and shuts down an airport. But of course, when that hits, their customer support calls spike and they might not have enough people ready to help. Or maybe those people are also stuck in the storm and they've lost power to their homes and their customer support center can't work. So now you have this huge mismatch. Everyone's calling in and your CS team can't either, you don't have enough people or they just can't get online.
Yep.
So that's where I guess AI could do some real work there.
Exactly. And that's also, it's interesting because this also goes into the buy versus build thing, which I think we should talk about at some point. Should companies be buying products or building them on their own? But for something like customer success, you have all your data. It's really easy to build a system that can, automate a lot of this and work with your existing customer success people to make them much faster. It's really easy to do that. So I think that's like a low effort, very high impact thing. With data analytics, the other workflow we talked about, I think this one's particularly interesting because if you can build a system that can learn how you do your own analytics really well, then it's massive impact. Like it's one of the highest impact things in the company because you're basically democratizing access to data, which is really important. But getting to that point is so high effort. It's like very, very, very challenging to build a system that actually quickly learns from what you're doing and how you do things with like SQL queries or other like visualizations, things like that. And that's like a whole different product. And so there's like a bimodal thing where, yes, you can, with very low effort, build something where you have a system that can generate SQL queries for you, but getting it to do it really well to where it makes a significant impact in your day-to-day life is really, really high effort. And so for that, like that's, again, buy versus build. For something like data analytics, I would definitely buy. Something like customer success, it makes a lot more sense to build. And yeah, so I think those are some considerations. That's an example of how I would apply this framework to a couple of real world workflows.
And Tarun, how about you? I mean, you're essentially advising companies on this exact question. How do you agree with that framework, number one? But then also number two, how does a company think through the cost of that, right? So it's one thing for Abhishek to say, hey, look, I have a software platform, you can go do this. Who's going to do it? How much is that really going to cost? What are the expenses you should be looking at? And then how do you help them think through the ROI of it? Or do companies care about the ROI right now versus just saying like, AI is really hot and sexy and I feel like I need to go use this ASAP?
Yeah, that's a great question. And no, I'm actually glad, Abhishek, that you like made that step back, because what you described in the framework that you do is, or that you laid out, is exactly what we do during the first part of every engagement that we have with our customers, right? And the very first thing is the audit, and that is exactly what we're doing: talking to every stakeholder and understanding their operations, mapping that out, and then trying to figure out, okay, well, out of all of these different workflows, what are the things that can be automated? What would that automation look like? What data is needed? And then, what's the effort look like? And we, right, as slotting in as somebody who's like trying to help these companies adopt, part of what we do is a buy versus build analysis, right? So at the end of the audit, we're like, hey, this is something off the shelf. BetterBrain would be the best solution for this, right? Like, you guys should just go and implement this yourselves. And the way that we work is we always just say, well, we could implement it for you, or we can help advise your teams and whoever you want to allocate towards it. Um, so first things first, definitely, I think that framework is the right way of going about it, and it helps sort of exfoliate all of your different data needs that I was like mentioning before, right? And saying like, well, okay, if I do want to automate this process, like, what would it actually take? And that's kind of where having somebody in the room who understands machine learning, AI, like what's going on with all of that stuff, is important, because they're the ones who can educate on what is actually needed, right? Like what data is needed, et cetera. In terms of what I've seen, it kind of depends. Some companies, if they're like trying to raise their next round, they're like, I don't give a shit what it is, just like put some AI up in my product or like in my operation, right? And
So
in which
basically,
case,
because every company needs to have AI right now, and they're in part of their
they're
pitch.
they're optimizing for fundraising. It's like they're playing their own game, and it makes sense. And some of them have actually, had some pretty good results from doing that, right? But largely, I think ROI does really matter, right? And that's like what I try to do at PressW, is really align our team with their goal, which is to improve, right, their margins, or create like a new vehicle for growth and monetization within their company that wasn't possible before. And whatever the solution is, and this is kind of why I liked doing the consulting route, right? I'm not stuck to one thing. If I'm like, hey, this is BetterBrain's the best one today, not to say anyone's ever going to outcompete you, but maybe there will be something else that comes along, I can make that recommendation, right? And I can just say, hey, go do this, and we have people in place that can come in and augment, slap on straight onto your team, and help you guys build this out. Or we can just sit back as advisors, right? And just like let you know what the best practices are, what pieces of information you're missing. And that sort of flexibility is really client by client, but definitely helpful.
How does one decide? I mean, okay, imagine you're a startup, or just even a business, right? And you either don't want to hire PressW, or even just like you're trying to do your research. There's so many companies out there that claim they do AI and use AI to solve X, which sometimes, by the way, looks a lot like, this isn't all that long ago. You saw 2 years ago, really, everyone was like, well, we're going to use Web3 and like crypto essentially, and on chain work to do X. It's going to be a better version of X. And it's like, okay, actually, none of it really solved a need in a better way. Sure, it's maybe it's more public and easier to track things, but so what? In the end. And it kind of feels the same way to me a little bit too today. It's like, well, hey, you use my company for customer success because we use AI. Well, as you sort of said, Tarun, every company is now saying that on their website because it's a sexy thing. Mm-hmm. How do I really know? And why do I really care? And then how do I figure out who's really going to provide me the ROI from a product perspective, right? How do I, and sort of question to you, Tarun, on that front from your advising, but also Abhishek, for you as a startup selling in the space, how do I know that I should use BetterBrain versus every other provider that claims to manipulate, use my data to help give my data teams answers? Like, okay, sounds great, but everyone says the same thing. How do I really understand that you're better and can drive 10x change in value for my company?
Yeah, when I'm looking at this from like a founder's perspective, and I've given this recommendation to other founders who are like want to build something in the AI space, right? But honestly, it doesn't really matter if you say use AI or crypto or whatever tech you want to use nowadays, and there'll be another one next year, and there'll be another one after that. Like, if you're not solving an actual problem and like delivering on that problem, like all this is a bunch of shit anyways. Like you really actually do need to solve the problem, right? And so I think every single company is going to start to say the same thing. 100%. We're already seeing it, and you're right on that, Adam. But I think that the true winners are going to be the ones who are actually solving the problem the best, right? And the market will sort of dictate it naturally, right? In this capitalist society that we live in, right? True value will shine through the ones who solve the problem the best. Whether or not they're using AI doesn't really matter, right? Like if you're able to achieve the same results and a better price point without using AI, okay, cool. Like it doesn't, to a business owner, and what I tell founders and business owners both is just pick the thing that actually solves the problem, right? And don't get bogged down by what tech they're specifically using and what's actually going on, as long as they're actually delivering you to your bottom line.
And Abhishek, is that what you're seeing as well? Like, or how do you differentiate as a founder who is explicitly building something in the AI space? How do you plan on having BetterBrain be differentiated in the marketplace? One, from a marketing and sales perspective for your own selves, but also, of course, on a product perspective. How do you prove out to people that you got to get your foot in the door and then be able to prove it? How do you plan on doing that?
Yeah, I think one big thing that I'll talk about here is customer centricity. It's just like, so I mean, I talk to probably like 10 to 20 customers a week at least. And I think it's just so important to truly understand. And a lot of people can talk about like a specific workflow that they're solving for. But I think very few people understand it deeply enough to where they can actually create a major impact. I'll give you a very simple example. There's a lot of companies out there today who do text to SQL. And I'll also say that no data team, I've talked to over 100 data teams over the past like few months. No data team gives a shit about text to SQL. And the reason is not because it's because the problem isn't actually in writing SQL queries. It's not in writing Python code. Like that's pretty easy. The problem is in like identifying who actually knows how to do a particular thing, who knows how to use this table and column. Once you know that stuff, writing the SQL query is super easy. And so the thing that I think is really important is understanding super deeply what problem you're solving and who you're solving it for and how they're doing things today. If you don't understand that, then I think it's really hard to build something that's actually going to get adoption in enterprise. For me specifically, for BetterBrain, the way I think about product differentiation, there's 4 major pieces. The first, and this is just looking at everything else in the market, I don't think there's anything else really that has these 4 components. The first is being super workflow centric. So I always talk about the specific workflow of ad hoc data requests that we're solving. And we're not just building a text to SQL engine. That is one of our very small features, yes, but our product is actually much more than that. It's like, how is a business team communicating with the data team to ask a question? How are they asking the question? What is the data team doing with that question? And then how are they actually fulfilling the request? What does that entire process look like? And then what is the business user doing after the data person has pulled the data for them? So being super workflow centric and building a product that streamlines that whole thing, I think is really important. And if you don't do that, if you build a point solution that's like text to SQL, again, buy versus build, a company will always be able to build a text to SQL product. They would never buy one for 100K a year, right? But if you build something that's very workflow centric, it's not possible, it's not feasible for a company that's not FANG to actually go build that. The second thing is human in the loop. So specifically with us, imagine you're a data analyst who's been writing SQL queries for 5 years. There's zero chance you're going to trust a random AI system that knows nothing about your data other than the schema to actually generate accurate queries or to actually understand business context sufficiently to give you reasonable answers. So being human in the loop is super important, especially, I think this really, Tarun, you'll have good thoughts on this, but I think there's a lot of workflows, a lot of things where accuracy is really important and some things where accuracy isn't. When accuracy is really important, you need to be human in the loop. When accuracy isn't as important, for example, like writing an article, then less human in the loop is probably okay. The third thing is the personalization thing that you guys were both talking about. It's interesting you guys both mentioned this because this is something that's very core to our product. And I think it's really important because, for example, at companies, what happens when sales and marketing are both asking for customer data? But sales, when they say customer data, they are looking at leads in Salesforce, versus marketing, when they say customer data, they're looking for like user signups on their website, right? Which lives in Amplitude or Mixpanel or something like that. And so having a system that's personalized to not just every organization, but every department, team, and user within the organization is incredibly important to actually building a system that's going to gain adoption in enterprise. And the fourth and final piece is agentic behavior, which ties into the reasoning capabilities that I mentioned earlier, where I think the thing that's most exciting about AI to me is those reasoning capabilities, not the generative capabilities. And agentic behavior sort of exemplifies that, where you can give the system like a very high level task, and then it'll break down the task into subtasks recursively. And so it'll keep doing that until it can solve each of those subtasks with one of the tools it has at its disposal. And so building in that agentic behavior is a really powerful UX for a lot of these products. So yeah.
And then wait, Abhishek, how does that lead? How do you get to trust though with that system, right? Okay, great. This system now is smart enough. It can look at my data, pull it in, build out the subtask to achieve the outcomes. But as you said, you kind of have to get to a level of trust where you can trust and say, okay, I think it's going to do the right thing. Now, granted, it's no different than if you hire a person full-time on your team and they claim to be a database expert or SQL expert, and you kind of have to trust them. But at least in those cases, they're coming with a bunch of references and referrals, and maybe we're doing that exact same work before at a previous company. So in theory, they should be able to do it. And I say in theory because we deal with this, of course, at our company a ton. There's lots of people who are hired in every job, and about 50% of them fail, which means they weren't as good as they said they were. They don't really know what they're doing. Frankly, if I can hire an AI to do that, and it is, and even if I have to fire the AI 40% of the time, that's still better than the people side, and obviously for lower cost. But there is, I think, for a lot of individuals, a level of trust that they feel with a human, even if you know logically that human's going to make just as many mistakes, if not, frankly, far more. How do you get to that level of trust where you say, okay, like I know the AI is going to mess up, but I still trust it, or at least trust enough of its outputs that this is providing real value?
Yeah, and this is why I talk about human in the loop, because this is really important in actually driving adoption in companies, because if the person doesn't trust the system, they're not going to use it. And so that trust barrier, I think, is incredibly important, which is also why all these text to SQL companies are going to fail, because no one's going to trust the queries that are being output. You need to do some sort of attribution. You need to tell the user how you got that data. So if I were to write an article, if I stated a bunch of facts, you wouldn't believe me unless I actually like linked sources, right? So there's all these different things that you could do to reduce and get past that trust barrier. Human in the loop is incredibly important, because as the data team sees the system improving on their data, and they say, okay, now the system is like, every time I ask it a question, it either tells me correctly that it doesn't know how to do it, or it tells me the right answer. Like as over time, as people see that, the same way that you would build trust with a human coworker, it's like, I have a question, they give me the right answer consistently, right? That's how you build trust with humans. And I think it's going to be very similar with these AI systems.
So go ahead, Tarun.
No, I mean, I think you just hit it on the head. Like it really is, and a lot of the work that we do when it comes to the implementation and like maintenance is always like there's people involved on your side. There has to be. Like this is not a black box solution where you're just going to put something in and then get something back out, because you won't trust it. And I mean, we dealt with this problem at Gather. We deal with this problem today with all of these solutions. Like trust is really built up over time, like time of like quality and like performance, right? And generally speaking, the way when I talk to key stakeholders, it's like, well, you're probably not going to get rid of your entire customer service, like success department, right? Or service department. Like there's still going to be people there, but maybe that they're able to perform 20 to like 50% better. The same way as like when I program and I use GitHub Copilot, yeah, it's like writing 40% of my lines for me, let's say. But I'm still the one looking at the code, running, making sure that its output is correct. And that's sort of a shift, right? It's a shift from generation to review. And that's sort of like the adoption that I've seen, like at least within like the employees and like the staff, is like you don't have to spend so much time writing an article. Maybe you're now just spending most of your time reviewing the article that was generated and making sure that it's up to the quality and performance that you are. And as you keep doing that on a long enough time horizon, more and more aspects that we currently don't trust will get alleviated.
And it's actually it's a great point, and it's one that I hear a lot of people who get nervous about AI. I mean, it's going to take my job and things like that. But it feels like every new generation of tech, it's the same discussion and things like that. It's like, well, sure. When I was able to start typing on a computer and not handwrite things, it took the jobs of people who were scribes. And sure, like that sucked. But now the people who are scribes could type and they could produce Word documents 20%, 50%, 100% faster because they could type. And it actually expanded the world of opportunity for everyone who learned how to type. Now, sure, if you only could handwrite things, you might remain in the past. But if you adopt this new technology, suddenly you can do so much more. And so, yes, AI is going to change. There might be fewer customer success people, but the other people can go on and do different jobs, or customer success now just gets way better, right? So to the airline example I gave, hey, maybe you have a bunch of AI agents, and when the communications go down and the flights are all canceled, your AI agents can spin up and they're always ready to go at all times. And now you spend way less time on hold. And so you as an individual consumer can go on and do other things with your life because you got the right answer faster for what you're trying to achieve. So to me, I mean, we're all on this sort of cutting edge in that way, and I'm obviously very excited by this. And I think it's just another step in our continuing kind of evolution towards tech, probably improving and enhancing all of our lives on a regular basis. And so going back to one thing I want to make sure we really focus on, because I think it's critical, is the data component. What data do I need to have in what level of cleanliness to actually use AI inside of my organization? Like what does that really mean and look like? And that's open to either one of you to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can get into the specifics of AI, but I really think the way that we've been discussing like PressW's audits, and like Abhishek was describing the framework that he used, is really the first place to start, right? Is looking at what you're actually trying to solve, like what's the problem, because the data will flow from that. The data needs will flow from the problem statement itself, right, or the solution that you're trying to build. Um, Now, during the actual implementation part is where you're going to have to start getting a little bit more specific, right, about what type of data that you're cleaning and collecting and organizing. But one thing I've seen myself is that these tools are getting better and better at handling, scrappier data. Like you can feed, I mean, if you talk to GPT, you can ask it some pretty like bad questions and it's able to understand what you're getting at because of the reasoning capabilities, right? So these systems will get more robust to bad data, but in terms of like what data to collect and what you should be doing in terms of organization of that, that really does stem from what you're trying to solve. That's first and foremost.
And does it matter how you're trying to capture that data? So, I mean, for us in Abhishek, I'll speak in terms that you love, right? So at Levy, we have all these workflows we run for our customers so they can run their business. We capture some of that. We do capture the task and we capture when it got started, things like that. But there's a lot of steps that happen in third-party systems that we're not capturing today, right? The task might be go hire an employee, and it goes off to the HRIS system, goes off to the equity system, goes off to the benefit system, goes off to the background check system. And it's kind of a human sitting in the middle running these discrete tasks that are part of a larger workflow. But we're actually not capturing a lot of that data, which bothers me because I do want to be a data-driven organization, but it's actually hard to capture that right now. And I'm guessing a lot of organizations might be in the same boat, right? They're doing a lot of work. You can kind of train a person to do the work, but capturing that information is seemingly difficult.
Yeah, and Adam, this is what I talk about all the time. This is what we do. We help capture that tribal knowledge. This is all tribal. What you're describing, this is all tribal knowledge that lives in individual people's heads. How do you use a specific tool? If Adam says to go hire someone, how do I go do that? Our system over time, and this is a thing that I think is really important. So I'm glad you bring it up. There's so much information that is documented, but 90% of it isn't. 90% of it lives in people's heads because people hate writing documentation. People don't maintain documentation. So even if there is documentation, it's outdated, right? And so a lot of that information lives in people's heads. How do you capture that information? And I think there's an art to doing it, and there's no like one answer, but this is like what we do every day, right? Like for example, with SQL queries, if a person is writing a SQL query in your system, you can capture that and you can extract certain concepts from it. And then you can have models that use those concepts and apply it to future queries. For what you're describing, like if you have a workflow that you're executing for a client, if you have a system that can like understand that, okay, in the workflow, these are the things we do. And then to do each of these steps, these are the things we do. And so you can recursively break them down. It's exactly what like a virtual assistant would do, where you take a complex task, break it down into subtasks, and then look at how you're breaking those subtasks down recursively, and then what tools you're using to solve each of those subtasks. That data is really hard to capture. I agree. And I don't think it's feasible to document it in general. And so you need a system that can actually capture that tribal knowledge somehow and store it and then actually make it useful. Sort of like an internal brain for companies.
A better brain, maybe, perhaps.
Maybe a better. It could.
Well, I think what you're saying. I think what you're saying too is, I think it's important to actually start to look at the data capturing level from like what the existing process is. Like, and this is a question I like to ask during our audit process, but it's like, excuse me. But it's like, okay, well, yeah, maybe your exact sales script is not being like captured and updated and maintained over time, right? But every single one of your calls are recorded. There might be insights that we can gain from that, or maybe they're not being recorded. Maybe that's the place to start, right? Like we really should be putting in like a note taker on your calls to ensure that everything is being transcribed. But the better that we can fit the data collection onto what's already happening and like pulling out these insights, I think the better, results that you're going to get, because 100% correct. Like you're never going to have up-to-date information. People just don't like doing it. And especially people who are good at what they do, it's a slowdown, right? It's like, well, I don't, like it's not like every day somebody's asking you, how do you do your job? And you have to like write it down. Like you are getting better at your job every day and iterating on your process. And every single time you have to go back and capture it, it would be a pain in the ass. But if there was like somebody, imagine you had like a little bot sitting behind you, just watching everything that you did throughout the day and was like learning differences in the things that you were doing iteration to iteration, like that, the closer that we can get to that, the more data and extractions that we can make without breaking the system that's already in place.
So does this get to a world? I mean, in some ways, Abhishek, what I hear you saying and turn a little bit less of it similar, do we actually get to a world where you aren't actually collecting data in the traditional sense anymore? Like I think we've all come from this perspective, or at least I have, where I need to capture data before I can do a lot with that data. It sounds in some ways what you're saying, Abhishek, is that's actually an outdated perspective on the world. You don't need to directly capture the data. Maybe you do want to have this sort of like, AI helper that's tracking what you do on your computer at all times. And like, let's say, I maybe there's a world where there's just an AI helper that's sitting on my computer right now, and it's recording this conversation, and it's recording the stuff I type and all the things that I do. But it's not, and so it's tracking all that, and it knows that, hey, this is a video recording for this because it sees my calendar invite, it knows what it's about, and it sees these other pieces. Is that like the world we're heading into, where it's not just discrete? We need to do the marketing data collection, we need to do the sales data collection, the finance data collection. It's actually just like capture everything, and the AI knows how to break it up, clean it up, and get it into a place where it is usable for the right AI agent. Is that like, walk me 2 to 5 years down the road, or maybe even 10 if you want to really speculate, but like what does this really look like long term for a startup in business?
So this is the world that I'm most excited about. I don't know if this is actually going to happen, but I think you can't build useful AI systems or copilots unless you understand how humans are doing things today. And the primary reason for that is adoption.
We know, we're sorry to interrupt you, but like we know, and you both said this, right? Humans are essentially inherently, and I'm too, like we're lazy. I don't want to spend extra time capturing this data. I don't want to spend extra time writing this stuff down. The moment I write it down, it's outdated, and keeping it up to date is really difficult. I mean, that's a challenge we face internally ourselves. So I don't want to do that. So you're sort of saying we maybe will get to a world where finally data collection and automation will meet humans where they are, which is this sort of inherently lazy place of, I don't want to do any of this. I don't want to do this extra work because it's annoying. Or will we reach that point, basically?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I could imagine how you would build a system that it's like two-part system, right? The first part is understanding what humans are doing today, and then having a feedback loop where you start to do some of that work, and then humans are only doing what they have to, and then you're continuously learning. So over time, there's very little that you don't know. Maybe there's like things that pop up where you need a human's help, but over time that goes to zero. And that's 5, 10 years in the future. I think that's what the world looks like. And I think the way that happens is you need to create these feedback loops in products where the system learns from everything the human does, and then the human only does what they have to. And over time, the human doesn't have to do much.
And then, so does that change? Sorry to jumping from that, Tarun, I want to give you a check answer too, but I'm really curious on this timeline. Right? Does that change then the entire nature of being an entrepreneur and starting your own business? Right? To pull this back to entrepreneurial excellence, does that mean, right? We've already seen examples of this where you're can be a big startup, and you only have a few hundred employees at most, and you can be a pretty big successful company. Does that change the nature of it? Where I'm 5 or 10 years from now, I have a cool startup idea, and all I have to do is I'm going to go buy the customer success bot, and I'm going to go buy the CFO bot, and I'm going to go buy the sales bot, and buy these other ones that are all pre-built, and I plug them all in, and they've all been trained on this data from all these other companies that were doing this manually before. And now I'm a company of one, but I can serve N number of fully scalable companies out there, with my own very specific niche product. And maybe I have and I'm not a startup founder as much as I am a AI overlord or something, to use some probably bad terminology. But essentially, that's my job. It's not CEO of a company. I'm not chief executive officer anymore. I'm chief AI officer or something.
In the long run, I would say yes, that's where the world is headed. I was just going to say, I think I'm already starting to see companies where you have like a few nearshore, onshore employees, call it 5, and then you have like 30 to 40 offshore employees. We're already seeing this trend, right? And I think a lot of those offshore employees,
What are the offshore? What are the offshore versus onshore employees doing that's different?
yeah, typically onshore employees are just managing those offshore employees, right? They do like a lot of the vision setting and high level stuff, but then at the end of the day, they're just managing those offshore employees. I think over time, these AI, like it's very analogous to what I expect we'll see soon, where instead of these offshore employees, you have a few people who are managing all these AI agents. So yeah, go ahead, Tarun.
Yeah, I mean, no, I 100% agree with you. Like, this is the reality that's like super exciting to me, and it's like one of the most exciting things about, I think, building in this day and age and like starting something new, is that, and this is something that like we try and do a lot, which is like it's about increasing capacity, right? Like, one thing that I've learned is like in my last company, we hired a bunch of people, had to fire a bunch of people just because like they weren't performing. Like, the people who really bubbled up, they're able to produce such a high output compared to those who end up like not making the cut. Like, there's like these superstars, right? And so like if you can take their processes, which traditionally before the only solution, like if you wanted to increase capacity, was to hire more because a person only has certain number of hours in the day. But if you can take their, like, let's say they're at 100%, traditionally if you hire people, it's like a cascading like loss situation, right? Like, the person that they hire maybe is only 80% as good as them. The person they hire is 60%, it'll go all the way down, right? If you can now take that 100% person and increase the work, or the where their work is being focused to, by automating away these other systems that are more mundane and repetitive and don't require their level of expertise and skill, you can build incredibly efficient, like it's almost like a new style of company, right? It's like, and it's interesting because like I think actually Elon did this with Twitter in some ways.
It's now X. It's now X, to be clear.
Oh yeah, X, right? He just fired like everybody, and then kind of showed. I think he showed that you can run a really big organization. Now history will tell, like, or time will tell. Sorry, like what ends up happening with it. But I think he did show that you can run a highly successful organization with far fewer people than everybody was saying that you needed. And now with AI, right, we're going to be able to increase the capacity of these superstars, build really, really small, focused, and just fast moving teams, because like the mundane things that slow everybody down are getting out of the way. And like that's what's like really, really exciting to me about building right now is because and in my company, I'm like, oh, can we get call transcripts every day, and we generally send summaries back to our clients, right? Like after a call with like next steps, action items, right? They like to be kept in the loop. We automated all of that. So our transcripts come in and it gets fed through a bot that parses, has a couple different tasks associated with it. It creates some like tasks in our project management software. It pulls out all of that action item with like basically one review from us. So within 30 seconds, email gets sent, information is saved in our knowledge base, in our Notion space, tasks get created, Slack messages get posted, boom, like that, right? And that is like really where the future of business, in my opinion, I think Abhishek, you're saying the same thing as well, is going to head, where you're gonna be like a small deadly force, like like SEAL Team 6, and you just get shit done, right? And you don't have to worry about like building out an entire huge organization just to increase your capacity.
So let's pretend I'm one of those 10x employees, or even an average employee at a company.
Mm-hmm.
Should I be pretty scared of this future? Like, I don't know. That sounds kind of scary. Basically, you're basically saying my job is no longer necessary. What should I be? Should I be scared of that or embrace it? And if embrace, how should I embrace it?
I think it's a really cool reality where you're going to be able to do what you do best more, right? And so again, with this like whole, if you like think about the whole like cascading loss sort of equation or like that I was talking about, right? Like now it's not because these like mundane aspects are getting sort of taken away, or like things that I bog down my day, and I'm able to just really focus on the things that, I want to be an expert at, and like have everything else just kind of get taken care of for me. I think it would be exciting for people, because like this is the whole premise behind your company, right, Adam? Like back office stuff kind of sucks. Like it's a pain in the ass. So I don't want to think about it. I want to put in my credit card and I want somebody to go file my taxes or like do this invoice for me, right? And if it's like, oh well, now like I don't even need to um worry about sending out these meeting notes, or I don't need to do any of this stuff. I can just focus on what I do really well, which is for me, leading the company and just like helping with allocations and all of this other stuff. Then I can go do that, and I don't have to worry about like a serious lack in quality, especially as these AI systems get better and better over time, and as like we build up this trust and performance profile.
Abhishek, what do you think?
Yeah, this is the hardest question that you've asked so far. I think it's very hard to predict what the future looks like. I think let's take it as far out as we can, right? Like we've been talking about next 5 to 10 years. Let's say we're 30 years in the future, and these AI systems are really good. If you start from first principles and think about, and this is a question to both of you, but if you start from first principles and think about what really is needed in the world, people need food, water, and shelter. Like those are the three basic things. And then you branch out and you have companies that service all of those. You have restaurants for food, you have grocery stores, you have farms, you have for water, you have like water plants, for shelter, you have like manufacturers, things like that. And then you keep branching out. But if all of these companies can be run by just a few people, then what does the rest of the world do? Like do we go to socialism? Does money have any real value? Like if 99.9% of the world doesn't need to work to fulfill any major need because AI systems can already do it, does everyone start focusing on entertainment? Does everyone just play sports? My hypothesis is, we saw like in the Industrial Revolution, we saw specialization of the workforce, right? I think we're going to go in the opposite direction as time goes on. I think more and more people are going to focus on things that they're excited about, things that they're passionate about, art, sports. But I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think about this, because this is always like the most interesting question to think about. So
Yeah, there's been many discussions on my side as well with like especially like Bryson, who's like our head of AI. Him and I have just like spent a lot of hours talking about this. To be honest, I don't know the answer either, right? Like I don't think anybody can like, nobody has a magic ball. Like when people were talking about AI when it first started, they were like, oh, like the most manual like labor stuff is going to be the first stuff to get automated, like these high or like creativity and like those jobs will not, right? But then GPT came out and kind of flipped that whole thing on its head. Now it's like, oh, you don't really need a copywriter anymore. Like, maybe you don't need a copywriting team. Maybe you just need one guy who's really good at copywriting, and like this bot can just like generate all of this stuff. It was like one of the first areas that sort of got explored. Um, so I'm not sure anybody can reliably predict the future. I am a little worried about like what happens like in the future when they have like so many people and like not enough work to go around because everything's kind of automated away. But I do think what Abhishek is saying will happen in the meantime, and maybe even in that reality, right? Which is like there's no longer people are going to be more free to focus on what they actually really like doing, because it's the barrier to entry to do what they want to do is a lot simpler, and they can start to like perhaps build a business around it. And I think we're starting to see that now, like more and more entrepreneurs like shifting over, because they've realized like, yeah, maybe building like a company isn't like super hard as it once was, right? Like as these like SaaS companies pop up, as companies like Levy pop up that help with all of these other operations within an organization, it's becoming easier to just focus on delivering one thing and delivering it really, really well.
Yeah. So Tarun, I'm going to take that one step further and give a very confident answer, which is always dangerous to be overly confident, to your question, Abhishek, which is taking that thread of Tarun's, but I'm going to go many steps further. Is I think the world becomes a place where everyone is an entrepreneur. There is an entrepreneurial niche for every single interest. Just like if you think about it, what did the internet enable? It enabled a world of abundance for every single interest you might have. You can go online today and find that interest. It might only be one other person in the entire planet who shares that interest, but you will find them if you search hard enough. Certainly, you will find them because they exist and they're online, and you can reach out, which wasn't possible 50 years ago, right? 50 years ago, they didn't live in your neighborhood or maybe even town. You might not ever know they existed, and so we didn't have a lot of our niches were like pretty big, right? We had three channels and 4 newspapers, and that was about it. Now suddenly there's a niche for everything. And I think we're going to get to a world where there's an entrepreneurial niche for everyone, and everyone who wants to have a job and wants to work will become their own entrepreneur. It might only be serving a customer base of 10 people who are going to pay you a small fee for that. And so what will also happen, and this is societally a bigger challenge, what that inevitably leads to is the amount of money that any individual person makes will also change pretty dramatically, because you're only serving a niche of 10 people. So you're not going to make that much money from it. But if everyone's making it, it sort of democratizes access to wealth in many ways, because everyone's making the same amount of money. If their niche, you might want to serve bigger niches and be better at it. So you're better at pulling in the right AI agents and bots and things like that to build that company. But there won't be that much of a difference between us 3 living in the United States versus a bunch of other folks living in India or Philippines or Africa, or you name it. Which means, frankly, the amount of money those places and people in those areas can generate will go up, and it probably means it will go down in the US. And so there's going to be some societal upheaval, which is a different set of challenges. But it also means that everyone has the opportunity to be an entrepreneur. Everyone can build their own business. Everyone can do what they love and not be forced into work that they don't because they didn't have another choice. So I'm very excited for that. I think, obviously, this interview series is called Entrepreneurial Excellence. I think everyone will be an entrepreneur, and hopefully because of companies like Levy, but all the bots that are out there, we will all be excellent at our jobs if we want to be, right? If we want to take advantage of these tools, you can be the 10x or really 100x programmer, right? Tarun, you use GitHub Copilot. Amazing. My guess is you're probably already a 10x engineer, pretty close to it. And now you're using GitHub Copilot, and maybe you're a 100x engineer. And maybe the other people who you've worked with who are maybe only 1x, 2x engineers, now they're 10x engineers. That's pretty badass. And yeah, they might still not be quite at your level, and maybe never will be. But you're also, as we talked about at the beginning, you're also willing to work 80-hour weeks and be in a room with your buddies just coding away. Not everybody's willing to do that, but that will be their choice. They're not going to be required to feed themselves. And to get back to Abhishek's point about the 3 core principles that you need as a person, that's gone now because of what this sort of age of abundance that AI is enabling.
Well, Adam, let me ask you a question. So I think that's really interesting. First of all, everyone being an entrepreneur, that sounds like an awesome future. Um, but if we take this one step further, where in this age of abundance, you have everything you need, what's the point of money? Like, does money actually have any value? Everyone has everything they need and they want. So, like, how does the monetary system work?
I still think there's a monetary system because there's still going to be levels of those things. And what I mean by that is like you still could choose, the iPhone 15 Pro or whatever, or you could choose the Android XYZ that's $200 versus $1,500. They both connect you to the internet. They both take photos. They both make phone calls. But there's a qualitative difference. That's sort of number one. And I think the reason I think money will still exist is because money is essentially the way to capture economic energy. So that's what money really is, right? If you break it down, I know going way off track to some extent, but it's kind of fun to go in this direction. Like money to me is the way we capture and store economic energy. Just right when you burn gasoline, it's capturing, well, in that case, like prehistoric energy that's been stored from the sun, and we're burning it up and making carbon. But when a windmill turns, it's capturing wind energy, which then gets stored in a battery, which then gets used later on. It's the same thing for all of us. When you make money and get paid, you're getting paid, right? Tarun's getting paid by his clients today because he's providing something of value. He's working for it. He's providing that of value. They're paying him money, which is essentially the way of saying we're going to give you essentially economic energy for the work you put in. He then decides if he wants to store it in a bank, or he can turn it around and spend it he can go get groceries from the grocery store, or he can go to a 5-star restaurant and spend it however he wants and recycle that energy in different ways based on his own choice. So I think that will still exist because economies will still exist. And so long as economies still exist, there has to be some way to store and transfer economic energy. And money is the best way we found to do that. Now, I think once again, it becomes more democratized, but I do think it doesn't go away.
Interesting. Nice. I love thinking about this stuff.
Yes. Good. And so we only have 10 minutes left. So I want to make sure we focus on, speaking of entrepreneurial excellence, you're both founders. You've both been through previous companies. You both have had different co-founders in where it's been challenging, easy, you name it. What parting advice do you have to any founder today who is starting a company in the age of AI? How do they build the next great company? But to my point, might not exist. There might not be the next great company because everyone's going to be an entrepreneur and maybe you're only serving small niches, but let's pretend it does. And you want to go build this. What key advice would you give to that future entrepreneur or even to yourself to go build the next great startup and business?
Yeah, I can share some of like my learnings and like my philosophy now, like having been through the arena a little bit. I'm still pretty early on in the grand scheme of things in my own journey, but I think that there's like something so magical. Like it's like really difficult to like capture in words the feeling of paddling together with people that you actually care about and trust towards the same destination. Right. Like, I'm sure like this probably happens on like NBA teams, sports teams are like an easy example, right? They're all like shooting for this championship and everyone has the same objective and is getting there. Like alignment to me has such a power within an organization. And I think that's something that I really get to feel a lot today, especially with the people that I work with. But it took a long time to really build that like relationship together and to build that trust to be like, okay, these guys know what we're doing, right? Like there's not a time where I go up to them and they're like, I have no idea. What are we building this business for? Like everybody has their own goals in life and where they want to take things. But in terms of aligning everybody around and building that trust, I think is really critical. And really, people say this all the time, but it's like you're kind of like picking somebody that you're going to marry. I think that is kind of true. Like you spend so much of your time with these other people. Like it's smart to be a little bit slow. And everybody's going to come to this is something I've learned. Everybody is always coming out with like hey, like, let's work together on this, let's work together on that. And they have amazing skill sets, amazing, qualifications, um, through and through. But if they don't align with you and match with you on where you're going to go, it's going to be extremely difficult to get to the destination that you have in mind. And so just like really building that, like taking your time to craft that relationship, that unspoken sort of level of trust where I can be like, yep, can you go handle that? And they're like, yep, we got it. And I can go to sleep every night knowing that they're aligned to the same destination I am, and that, we're all paddling together is, um, I think that's what keeps me doing this.
And Tarun,
Always.
how have you created that alignment? Like what are there, do you do projects together? Do you do questionnaires together? How do you kind of create that alignment? It's like, when you're dating someone, you go on dates and you figure this out, and you go on a lot of different dates to figure it out.
Yeah.
How do you do that as a founder of a company?
Yeah, totally. I think I got a little bit. Uh, I'm definitely lucky and like fortunate with the people that I work with today. Like I've been able to work with them for such a long time, and I've known them for such a long time. But we still do this. Like even to this day, there are things that we do to ensure that we are aligned. So, for example, right, like when we set out to start the company, or when we really determined what PressW really looks like, we all sat in a room and we're like, okay, well, what do we want out of this in the next year? We're about a year. What about 3 years, 10 years? Like where do all of us want to be? Like um, what do we want to have to our name? What do we want our impact to be? And when these are questions that you don't normally even ask your friends. And the people I work with were my friends before I, founded PressW with them. But that was interesting, right? Because like I was like, oh, you want to live in a van and like travel around to all the state parks and climb up all these mountains. And you don't really care where you live. Like that's what you want to do. You're in this game to buy your freedom to do that. That was okay, cool. Like I can work with that. Like now I understand, where your head is at. And so when I make my decisions about the company, I can factor that in. I can understand, well, this probably won't align with him if we have to make this decision, right? Or align with them if we have to make this decision. So what I do is like um, really try and plot out timelines and expectations around like what people want, and then do they understand, or can we all come to an understanding about what we need to do to get to what we want, right? And that generally, there's a couple different frameworks and systems that I've used. It's going to depend on the relationship that you're with. I think also working with people actually is really important. It's kind of like dating somebody and then moving in. Like it talks cheap in some ways, but like and I've been in this position before where it's like, hey, like I'm really, really good at this. Okay, cool. And then we start working, and then deadline gets missed, deadline gets missed. And it's like, okay, well, maybe you're not, executing at the level that I need you to be. Right. And so working together definitely does help. Um, but yeah, just I think overall setting the framework and then being really careful about who you pick um to push forward with you.
Abhishek, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I love what Tarun talked about. I think in terms of building a team, that makes a lot of sense. It's really interesting how you think about it. Um, Big lessons I've learned along my journey and things that I would advise new founders. One is that founder market fit is really important. I started a cloud gaming company. It's a cool idea. We built a bunch of like really cool tech, but at the end of the day, I'm not a gamer, and so I was not gonna stick it out for 5 or 10 years doing that. So founder market fit is incredibly important and it's like when things are good, everything's fine. It doesn't matter if you have founder market fit when things are good, but inevitably in businesses, things go bad. And when things go bad, the only way you stick it through those bad times is if you truly care about what you're doing. The second thing is customer centricity. So at Vector Dash, like I wasn't a gamer. I didn't really talk to gamers much. We did a little bit, but not enough for sure. And I think especially in the age of AI, it's really, really, really important to have a very, very deep understanding of your users. You should know where they hang out, who they talk to, what they have fun doing, what they hate doing, how they do their jobs. You should know all of these things about your users. If you don't know those things, you're not going to be able to build a product that makes them happy. And the third thing is fail fast. So when I was 21 years old, I used to have this thing around motion being everything. And I used to I would hustle so much, and I would everything was motion. I would never stop to like zoom out and think about, are we going in the right direction? And so as I've grown older and hopefully wiser, um, my thinking on this has changed a lot. So I think motion is incredibly important, but you also need high level direction. If you nail the high level direction, then a lot of motion will get you to where you're trying to go. But if you don't have that high level direction, you're just floundering. And so failing fast is really important, but make sure you're intentional about what you're doing. Just failing fast alone is not sufficient. So if you have the right high level direction and then you fail fast and iterate quickly, I think that's really powerful. So yeah, I think those are a lot. Also, one last
Yeah,
thing.
no,
Yeah. I'd like to. Oh, okay. I also got one last thing. I'll add.
go,
Yeah, I was
go
just
for, love it. Go.
I feel like this goes back to what Tarun was saying earlier, but it's really, really, really hard to find people that you just gel with in a professional setting, especially as a founder. Like if you're trying to move really fast, there's some like innate things around where you should like where tech debt is okay, where there's all these like little things that matter so much when you're working with someone. And if you find someone who you really gel with, then don't be stingy with equity. Get them involved and do whatever it takes to keep them on board, because it's really hard to find those people. And if you find that person, then you should do whatever it takes to keep them on board.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Like invest in the people who are willing to paddle in that boat with you. Like, and this is kind of the last thing I wanted to say is something that I've recognized is that like entrepreneurship a lot of times can be really, really lonely. Like sometimes it feels like you're the only one who maybe is pushing the boat, right? Like if you don't have another person who you know is like right there with you, and it can feel like that even when you do, like it feels like, oh, like I have all these problems on my shoulder, and that makes, I think that and it's also like most people are not entrepreneurs. One day, hopefully, with Adam's future, it will be the case. But a lot of people, there's not a lot of like built-in understanding about the problems that entrepreneurs face. And so when it comes to co-founders, I've seen, I've made this mistake, but and I know other people have too. But when you're really like lonely on your journey and you find somebody who like somewhat relates, it's really easy to like latch onto that, or like somebody who's willing to play the game with you. It's really easy to latch onto them, and you can put a lot of stuff on the back burner because things are going well. And I think Abhishek, what you said, which is like when things go poorly is when when all of these problems will really come to a head. Like that is extremely true. So what I've taken the approach of is have the difficult conversations up front, right? And get like really like cynical about it too. It's like, okay, well, like what happens if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, right? Like what happens to the company? Or, let's say you want to go and like you have a family now and you want to move, like what do we do then? Right. And just like cracking open that like case of really difficult questions will set the sort of guidelines and framework for as you guys progress through not only your company, but your own relationship. Doing that as early on, aligning around all of that and coming to some sort of understanding, building that like trust, I think is super, super important, because you don't want to be talking about, hey, how much like equity are you going to keep when you're leaving? And it's like you've been working on it for 2 years and like you're just now having this conversation when they've decided to leave. That's when bad things happen and, problems like arise. So have them early, get them in like writing, put them down somewhere so that everyone's clear about what's going to happen. And then just like align and move from there.
I'm sad we're out of time because I want to ask you guys, even like it's actually a perfect segue in a sense to ask you like, how do we all meet up in person? Why are we all of us in San Francisco or in your case, thinking about San Francisco? Even though we live in this world where we can be doing everything virtually, how do you still build that community and meet those other founders who are on this journey with you, even just to vent a little bit about the challenges we deal with daily? So maybe we'll have to do another episode about that at some point in the future. Part two, exactly. But thank you guys so much. I super appreciate the time. I'm looking forward to getting this out into the world and hopefully helping other entrepreneurs learn about how to go build and grow in the world of AI.